Hey, it's State of State. We got your Nittany Lion update. It's a football discussion with Tom and Justin, so kick back and press play.
With former Penn State and NFL defensive back Justin King, I'm Tom Hannafin. This is State of State. Please like, comment, subscribe, rate us, and turn on notifications. Follow us on social media at State of State Pod. Comment on our YouTube channel. And if you haven't done so already, you can become a member of our YouTube channel. For just 99 cents a month, you can get all upcoming episodes of State of State, plus our entire members-only playlist, ad-free, commercial-free. Hit the join button on our homepage or follow the link in the description of this podcast. This podcast is presented by BetOnline. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for betting on all the madness. Even if your bracket is busted, BetOnline has more ways to stay in the action with a free Sweet 16 bracket and live betting on every remaining tournament game. From every Cinderella story to every hat trick, BetOnline has you covered with odds, stats, and more for every game, every play, and every win. With the largest selection of odds on everything from college basketball to Major League Baseball, the NHL, and MMA, BetOnline continues to be your number one sports betting source. Penn State fans, are you feeling confident that the Nittany Lions can win college football's national championship next season? Or that Abdul Carter will go number one overall in the upcoming NFL draft? Lock in your futures bet at betonline.ag today. State of State is presented by BetOnline. The game starts here. State of State is a proud supporter of Blue White Outfitters. Blue White Outfitters was created as a retail shop meant to highlight the confidence, competitiveness, and fearlessness of the elite athletes found throughout the history of Penn State University. Check out their Lockdown U and Lawn Boys merchandise today. All sales from Blue White Outfitters directly benefit Penn State student athletes. Also, official State of State merchandise is available now. Support the show and grab State of State t-shirts, hoodies, hats, and more. Visit www.bluewhiteoutfitters.com today. Hi, everyone, and welcome to State of State. I'm Tom Hannafin. Penn State football spring practices got underway yesterday afternoon, and before that, head coach James Franklin had the opportunity to speak with the media and addressed a variety of topics. The upcoming blue-white game, what is that going to look like? What are spring practices going to look like for a team that played deep into the college football playoff, deep into January? The maturation of quarterback Drew Allar, depth at linebacker. Oh, by the way, what's happening with the wide receivers, notably the transfer wide receivers, the defense under Jim Knowles. A lot of different subjects. On top of that, some injuries that Penn State is dealing with at this point in time, left over from last season and going into next. So a lot to dissect here from James Franklin's press conference yesterday. Later on this week, Justin King will be back here on State of State to give his insight from spring practices. Very excited about that. I want to first start with the blue-white game. So that was announced. That'll be on Saturday, April 26th at 2 p.m. It was James Franklin who yesterday spoke and said, quote, "I'm aware of the impact that Penn State football has on this entire community. For me to say there isn't going to be a spring game, that wouldn't make sense. The game will not be televised." It's very important. Franklin went on to say, "We will have a spring game, probably more similar to what we've had in the past. I could see it maybe being a little bit shorter, probably no halftime, maybe shorter quarters, maybe no halftime. We have real football people in our fan base that want to see the team." And a small wrinkle to this that Franklin brought up is that this is going to be the first opportunity for defensive coordinator Jim Knowles to get into the stadium, work from the booth, get a feel for what that is like. So that's going to be an important piece to this. I think this makes a ton of sense. Obviously, Penn State fans would love to be able to tune in, watch this game. It's been a growing trend this offseason of college football teams either outright canceling their spring game or just electing not to televise it to kind of keep their cards close to the vest. The nice thing about the blue-white game is exactly what James Franklin has said, is that this is a community event. This is much larger than just guys getting out on the field and having their final practice of 15 practices. This is a chance for the community to come together. A lot of different events occur around the blue-white game, so this is a staple of the community. But I like that the fans are still going to be able to get in there. The lack of a halftime is good because if you're sitting there in Beaver Stadium and you're enjoying the game, you really don't want to see it stop down. And if it's not really a game, shorter quarters, live reps versus 7-on-7, who knows what it really could look like. this is a good solution in that you're protecting whatever it is you want to protect within your roster, and you're still giving the fans something to watch. And Penn State is a team that regularly puts 75,000 people in the stands for this spring practice, and that may vary based on this change, but still, this is a great opportunity for the community. So I was very happy to hear that about the blue-white game. Let's get to the comments about quarterback Drew Allar. And the question was asked, what is the one thing that Drew Allar needs to work on? James Franklin said, it's not one thing. He needs to take another step this year, and I think he's taken a step every year since he's been here. Leadership, completion percentage, touchdown to interception ratio. It's really all of it. There are some things that Drew, Danny O'Brien, and I have talked about. I don't think it's one specific thing. It's all of it. Drew still has a lot of growth and development. I think there's some people who might hear that and think, oh, there's a lot for him to work on or something like that. And there's other people who hear that and say, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's not just, well, everything is perfect, so he's just got to fix this. No, it's a consistent growth and development pattern. It's the thing I've said for the longest time, and I spoke to this point with Thomas Frank Carr last week here on State of State, is that when Drew Allar was in high school, he went from a 3-star to a 4-star to a 5-star within his senior season being underway. And then he got to Penn State 2023. He kind of gets out there, gets used to being a starter. 2024, he grows. 2025, I expect that incremental growth once again. This is kind of what the player is. This is what the athlete is. I think there's a lot of people expecting Drew Allar to maybe carry this team. I don't necessarily think that's going to be the case. I think you will see more instances a la the USC game where Drew is asked to go keep Penn State in a game or win a game for Penn State. I think you might see more of those situations. I think this offense is still very much going to be based around running the football with authority. And the question was certainly asked about the passing game in terms of changes going into this season. And James Franklin said, quote, if I'm a wide receiver or a tight end, I'm excited. And the big reason why for Franklin to point that out is because Tyler Warren's catches, over 100 catches, have to go somewhere. Franklin went on to say the wide receivers are competing with the running backs and the tight ends for catches, for touches. We have to make sure we're getting our best players the ball, and we need to make sure we have enough of those people who steps up among the wide receivers and tight ends. So I think that was a really good point for Franklin to bring up, because the strongest part of your offense going into this season is your tailback room. So you're obviously going to want to feature the running game pretty heavily, lean on your offensive line. You're returning 4 out of 5 starters. You got plenty of depth, and that's something Franklin spoke about yesterday. But there's the ability to get them involved more. Now, we've seen now Nick Singleton has taken a larger role in the passing game over the last few years, more so last year than the year before. Katron Allen, sparingly, not so much. Very curious to see if more of that happens in year 2 under Andy Kotelnicki. That might be a wrinkle they want to add in. Do they get more into the depth they have at running back? We saw a burst from Speed Demon and Corey Smith, Cam Wallace, Quentin Martin Jr., guys who are dealing with injuries in the past. What's their status going to be like for spring and into the summer? Could there be parts for them within the offense? But really at wide receiver and tight end, it's kind of wide open. Some footage has already surfaced of tight end Luke Reynolds looking really sharp early on in practice and could be the viable number 1 receiving threat at tight end. I could believe that. But at wide receiver, it is certainly a question of who's going to step up. And this is every single offseason. It feels like we've talked about this. James Franklin addressed the wide receiver situation. He said, quote, to judge a wide receiver before you've seen him in practice, it's hard to say in terms of their fit in our locker room, referencing especially transfers, Devontae Ross from Troy and Kyron Hudson from USC. Franklin went on to say that their effort, their demeanor has been great. Ross is exciting. We have a little bit more resources than Ross had at Troy. So we have a chance to develop him more as opposed to what you get in a guy from a similar type program. So no disrespect to Troy or the Sun Belt, but to Franklin's point, you're able to do more. You're able to provide more resources and opportunities for the athlete to better themselves at a major Big Ten program like this. Not to say that Kyron Hudson didn't have those opportunities at USC, obviously comparable in terms of a blue blood program. But for Devontae Ross, there's just going to be more to work with, more work to do, but more to work with. So for all of those opportunities, and I spoke with T. Frank about this, is that you see the opportunities where Penn State has publicly recognized the competitor of the day, during winter workouts. You've seen Devontae Ross and Kyron Hudson get some love. But to the point Justin loves to bring up on this show is that that's just, it's working out. It's not running routes. It's not getting separation. It's not making the contested catches. It's not just making catches, period. So that is going to be something that we're going to learn more. We're going to get more data about these wide receivers as spring practice wears on. Specifically about Devontae Ross, we heard James Franklin say that the game that Devontae Ross had against Iowa last year said, quote, that carried a lot of weight for us. Now, that's something that has been talked about heavily in terms of how do you compare Devontae Ross's game from the Sun Belt, from Troy to the Big Ten level. And last year really had a big performance against Iowa, well over 100 yards receiving, 2 touchdowns in that game. Very impressive. So to be able to do that against a reputable Big Ten program was certainly important to Penn State when they were looking at him in the portal. Speaking about Kyron Hudson, James Franklin said, quote, Hudson comes from a great high school program, played at a big-time college program in USC. He's had success at every level already. Whoever you speak to from any point in his career, everybody just loves the guy. So again, these guys continuing to fit in very well, it sounds like, early on. Sticking with the offensive line, or sticking with the offense, rather, the offensive line, the point was raised during this press conference of how this is an inverse from blue-white games past, where Penn State has had the unfortunate circumstance of not being able to field enough offensive linemen to actually play a full 11-on-11 scrimmage. That's not too long ago. Now, Franklin talked about this, and he was reflecting on the sanctions era and talking about, pre-portal, quote, you couldn't solve problems quickly. You got to recruit and develop up front on both lines. Those positions take time to develop. Age, strength, and size are all factors. We have a bunch of 3s and 4s we need to evaluate. Now, talking about that 1 to 2 deep that you're going to be able to get in there in something like a blue-white game in spring practices. You have a pretty good feel for who those guys are going to be, but this is the time of year where you really get a look at the 3s and 4s. Who can you move up? Who needs more reps? Who needs to slide to a different part of the offensive line? That's something Phil Trautwein has done an outstanding job of throughout his time at Penn State, of cross-training offensive linemen, so you could potentially hear quite a bit more about that. Flipping to the defensive side of the ball, a piece that we've been speculating about on State of State has been, what is the base defensive alignment going to look like for Jim Knowles going into this season? Now, in the past, it's been talked about that he likes a 3-down front, has used the 3-down front, has used a 4-down front as well. There were some tensions at Ohio State last year between Larry Johnson Sr. and Jim Knowles about the use of a 4-down front or a 3-down front. But basically what James Franklin came out and said during his press conference is that, quote, it'll probably be more of a base 4-2-5. Doesn't mean we won't sub-package and go to a 4-3. This fits our personnel this year and fits with what Jim has liked to do in the past. So I think this is very encouraging. Obviously, Penn State is inheriting a pretty good defense, a good amount of pieces. Now, I've gone off to the National Football League and or transferred. Speaking about Jim Knowles, James Franklin said, Jim knows we have to get our best 11 guys on the field at Penn State. That may mean 3 safeties or 3 corners. And basically went on to say if we had 3 killer linebackers, so on and so forth. So it looks like the competition at linebacker, the question was asked about replacing Kobe King. A lot of people naturally and wisely jumping to Tony Rojas and Dom DeLuca being the guys within the 4-2-5 alignment that you're going to see the most of. Tony Rojas, very nice season last year. Dom DeLuca was huge for this team in the college football playoff. But James Franklin pointed out a number of guys, talking about Keon Wiley, who's coming off of injury, Tamir Robinson, who James Franklin said is ready to take the next step. Franklin doesn't say those things without giving it a lot of thought. Anthony Specca was another name that was brought up. Quote, we're expecting him to take the next step. You've got Arrington, LeVar Arrington II, who our good buddy Landon Tengwall was already pointing out on social media, kind of looks body type wise, just like a freshman year Abdul Carter. He's wearing the sticks. That vaunted number 11, so we'll have to keep an eye on that. But at the same time, James Franklin pointed out a variety of other players. He talked about Kari Jackson. He talked about Beckham D as well, redshirt freshman out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Mount Lebanon. And then Kari Jackson, redshirt freshman out of West Bloomfield in Michigan. So you've got a couple of names here that get thrown out. And I believe there was one more I want to look up here. Where was it? It was Tash. Believe it was Tash. Yes, Alex Tash, freshman out of Greater Latrobe, 6'2", 230 pounds. So a variety of names that he pointed out at linebacker that, there's a lack of depth now with Kobe King and Tyler Elsdon no longer with the program, but they're still young talent that just hasn't gotten the opportunity. So that lack of depth, I can correct myself in that, it's a chance for these guys to get that experience and show what they're capable of. So right now it's just figuring out what are those guys that are going to rotate in to be that third linebacker. Is there a select package that really works for Penn State in terms of utilizing that depth at linebacker? Speaking of Tony Rojas and linebackers, the question was asked about injuries. As I mentioned, Tony Rojas dealt with some injuries last year, as did tight end Andrew Rappleyea and tackle Anthony Donko. Anthony Donko went down in the Minnesota game, and then you saw Nolan Rucci come in at right tackle and played extremely well. James Franklin said, quote, "They will not be fully available in the start of spring ball." So we've got to see how much or how little they're able to participate in. But the important thing that James Franklin reinforced throughout this press conference is that you're going to see modified reps in spring ball for veterans. He said, quote, "It's an opportunity for guys behind them who are competing for roles." And you have to remember, this is a team that played deep into January, got to the Final Four of the college football playoff. So having this opportunity for the veterans to continue to heal up, I know that might sound crazy, but still taking that time to heal up and recover and get ready for the next season, whatever it is they have to do. And then for young guys to get the opportunity in spring practices to show what they're all about, get those reps that they absolutely need, continuing to tack on body weight, whatever you might see within the depth chart that gets put out there. And Chuck Losey is working them, grinding them in the weight room, those sorts of things. So it just seems like Penn State's in a good position based on what the expectations are for 2025. And Penn State fans that are able to attend the blue-white game are at least going to get a good idea of what this team could look like. So James Franklin having the opportunity to address the media yesterday. Spring practice is getting underway. Penn State has 15 practices to play with, and that will culminate with the blue-white game on Saturday, April 26th. That's at 2 p.m. Hopefully, if you're in the State College area, you get to take the opportunity and get a look at that. It will not be televised. That's an important thing. But at this point in time, it feels like Penn State is on good footing, seeing where this all progresses. Later on this week, Justin King is going to give us his insight on spring practices right here on State of State. Thank you all so much for joining us. This episode and our entire library of shows is available now on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever else you get your podcasts. Please like, comment, subscribe, rate us, and turn on notifications. Follow us on social media at State of State Pod. Comment on our YouTube channel. And if you haven't done so already, you can become a member of our YouTube channel. For just 99 cents a month, you can get all upcoming episodes of State of State, plus our entire members-only playlist, ad-free, commercial-free. Hit the join button on our homepage or follow the link in the description of this podcast. State of State is presented by Bet Online and by Blue White Outfitters.